on, we will be linking with Sister Edith Roberts, an educator from Open Air. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, Sumayya. Always to be happy to be here, and of course, a pleasure to be alongside you and the listeners of Radio Al Ansar. I do, on the onset, want to just say that before I say Assalamu alaikum to all the listeners out there, I have to say a special Assalamu alaikum to my new grade 2 RS class. I promised that I was going to give them a shout out. They gave me a script, but we're not going to stick to the script. Just going to say that before their bedtime and before their read aloud time with their parents, and their 100 book challenge for this year, and I'll chat to you a little bit later about that. I'm going to say Assalamu alaikum to them, and I'll see them tomorrow, inshallah.
Read Aloud Day. And, you're also the blogger of Creative Classroom Concept, and not forgetting the delicious, yummylicious delectables. But Read Aloud Day, our focus tonight is reading aloud. To begin, tell us, what's the purpose of reading aloud?
So, Sumayya, in simple terms, reading aloud helps students or people to learn how to use language to make sense of the world. It improves the information process skills, vocabulary, and of course, comprehension. What we hear from what we read is what we take in to our brains, what we comprehend, what we make sense of, and of course, reading aloud targets those skills, and it targets the audio learner, if we have to say. Instead of you reading on your own, you read to somebody or you listen to somebody reading, and that way, I would say, comprehension skills are built.
End of the day, reading is reading. But when you look at the government sector and the private sector, the approach is the same, but the outcome is different. So later on in the show, as I mentioned, we'll discussing Read Aloud with a teacher from a state government school. Now, you are from a private school, so I know I've been there. Wow, I felt like I was in fairyland on Read Aloud. People were dressed in book characters.
Yes, so we do encourage reading. We have a Growing Great Readers campaign. And even though, alhamdulillah, we have such an amazing reading stamina, if I have to say, amongst our learners, we still encourage and we still do all the wonderful things when it comes to events and encouraging reading, because you can never stop. You can never let children just think, I'm reading and that's that. You have to create that excitement as a parent, as a teacher, as a grown-up. And inshallah, when we chat about the ways that we can do that, we hope that the listeners out there will benefit from tonight's program.
In my introduction, I mentioned what is Read Aloud, the importance of it. You can read to someone who cannot read, So in your terms, with Creative Classroom Concepts, what is the importance of reading aloud?
So for me, and that this is really personal opinion, I'm an avid reader myself. And there is that saying that readers are born on the laps of their parents, so young readers. And then there's that readers, become leaders. But for me, the most important thing is that parents and teachers, they read aloud to children. Reading aloud builds that important foundational skills and introduces new vocabulary, provides a model of fluency, expressive reading, and it helps our children recognize what reading for pleasure is all about.
Okay.
And that really is the love of a book. So for me, there's a difference between learning to read and reading for love, and the love of a book and the love of understanding a story or using your imagination and letting it travel through an adventure.
I've seen you at many events and educational stuff right from malls. You were doing reading. I think one was at Gateway, one was at Cadbury's, one was I think a Nasheed program the radio had. So you are one of the readers who read stories to children.
Yes, so I think that when you read aloud, you really get to express yourself. So I think for me as a teacher, reading aloud gets me to express my dramatic side. And every woman has that drama queen side to them. So for me, I love a good storybook. I love a good children's storybook. Personally, I'm not a reader of, if I have to say, fiction. As growing up, I never enjoyed that. I would enjoy an autobiography, a magazine, real stuff that I would think, a cooking magazine, that would really teach me something. But when it comes to kids' books, there are amazing books out there that I love, and I'm for it. When you speak about the campaigns that I've done, yes, I've done in bookshops. I've read aloud to people. I've had the opportunity, alhamdulillah, to bring about, like for instance, Ramadan in the mall. So to read about books, that are based on Ramadan, and to really just call in every sector to come into the bookshop and to listen to a story. When we speak about the Cadbury's one that I did about a year ago or so, that was based on really an amazing initiative where you could go in as a kid. Obviously, I did it as an adult, as a teacher, and you read the book and then they record you.
Wow.
And then you get to tap on a link, and the book comes out from this little gadget, and you get the book to take home, and then you click on the link and your voice is reading. So that's an idea for parents out there. Put on that cell phone voice recorder. Let your children read that book and then play it back to them.
Since you're talking about that, I think we're giving our age away. When we were in school, even when we were doing speeches, we always had a tape recorder. Yes. I know the teacher in the classroom had a tape recorder, and the famous thing is if you're practicing a speech or if you're public speaking, tape yourself, record yourself, and listen to it. No fancy gadget. There were no cell phones. Oh my God, there were no cell phones, and
there was no voice notes.
Stand in front of that mirror, or irritate every single one at home, from mom, dad, granny, whoever. Right, listen to my speech. Listen to what I'm going to say, and everyone will just run away from you. So that was the hard way. But we totally forget that on our cell phone we can record ourselves, and we can even do little videos. I've seen teachers and even learners who took set books and made little snippets, important, in like a film, like a video.
Yes, and then they MP4 it and then it plays. And that's just such a wonderful way for when we speak about, you said you're going to go into government sector, and maybe we chat about not having the resources, of really creating your own resource.
Wow.
As a parent, as an educator, create that book as an audio book, and then let the kid watch it as that MP4 video and that audio.
And that encourages us to want to teach reading, because you know what, in School Matters, I just say the way it is. Teaching is not easy, especially if you're dealing with like 50 or 40 demanding kids. You got so much to do. Sometimes you tend to lose that spark in your teaching. You're just basically doing what you have to do, the curriculum. So this way is also creating that those teaching aids to excite the teacher too.
And as a teacher or as a parent, if you're doing it at home, it really makes you feel empowered. That, you know what, I did this for my little one. And I speak about little ones because I am a foundation TA specialist. But even for adult readers, if they listen to themselves and they want to encourage themselves to read something. And podcasts came about like that, where audiobooks, and people listen to podcasts, and people listen to the radio, people listen to us. So that is really comprehension skills of, I would say, reading out aloud.
Yeah.
We listen to the news that's read out aloud, and then we comprehend what we say.
Do you know, since you're talking about that, tomorrow throughout the world, all schools, institutions, everywhere, is taking time just to read aloud. And there's so much of hype in other provinces and countries. And I feel like we as KZN, we're a little bit like slowing or slacking on the literacy side. So I know your school, it's like either Christmas or it's like Eid or it's some special celebration tomorrow. Can you tell us about Read Aloud Day?
So for us, we always Alhamdulillah, we have a team of teachers that really go all out, and we share the idea, and then everybody's just on board. So for us tomorrow, it is going to be quite a big day where we are going to have some guests coming in, and we've got a beautiful lineup of guests. And it was the challenge of each teacher to find that guest. So, Maya, I know that you're one of the guests too, and we look forward to it because last year I know that somebody invited you and you came dressed up.
As
I'm actually
Red Riding
invited
Hood.
also after my program to, I would say, how do I put it? A government school, and their numbers are huge.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that part and to giving back to community.
Yeah.
So I hope I'm going to be brave enough to dress up as well and to give back for World Read Aloud Day to these children. And yes, so there are some things planned, and I'm going to have to say that you're going to have to look at our social media handles and our really just to look at teachers' handles and to look at what we have planned. I don't want to give away too much in case there are children listening in, and then we blow our cover. But we are excited about World Read Aloud Day.
Wow. And School Matters will actually be visiting ALOUD tomorrow.
Yes, so we are excited to have you guys, and the children, I think they are excited as well. We hope that the nerves don't set in, but what better way of, really just asking children questions and getting the best and the most honest answers out of them.
Right, when you think about it, when we were in school, little things we still remember, that concert, that debate or speech contest, or that book character day. Those are things that stuck with us, and they also created that memory that reading is so important. So we need to continue the legacy of doing all
course,
this.
yes. And there's so many amazing reading enrichment days out there. I mean, this month is World Read Aloud Day, but in April there's World Book Day. There's a National Reading Week that's in September. With it aligns with World Literacy, or if we have to say, World Literacy Day or International Literacy Day. There are so many events that we as parents can make a big deal out of. As teachers, we can make a big deal out of it, so the children feel that they are a big deal when it comes to reading. And with tomorrow in advance coming up, reading out aloud.
Okay. Asif, have we linked up with our next guest? Okay, listeners, we were talking to Sister Rihanna Sayed. She's from Al Falah College, a private school. She's going to be continuing on our show till the very end. But we are also linking up with Sister Edith Robert from Open Air, a government school, learners with special needs. And now when you tend to look at a simple teaching curriculum or some lesson, which is the same lesson which is taught in a private school and a government school, how it differs, what are the challenges, and how it's done different. Because a lot of emails I was getting from government educators, it's impossible, there's no time, there's no resources, we are exhausted, but teachers still make it happen collectively as a whole staff. So we are linking up with Sister Edith Roberts. Hello, Edith.
Good evening, Sumayya, and good evening, listeners.
It's been very, very long. Where have you been?
Yes, it has. Well, the department has us very busy, Sumayya. We're up to our ears in admin, so we are really, really hectic.
Wow. And you know what? You told me the very same thing last year, December, and who knew it'll be February, and you'll be telling me the very exact same thing again.
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Yes,
so
exactly.
If you heard some of my introduction, we're talking about World Read Aloud Day, right? You go to a school which is absolutely big, where there are learners who have different learning barriers. It's a government school. Tell me things which affluent schools or private schools or ex-Model C schools can do. What are the challenges? Now, if you had to do read aloud, just say in your management. So if you had to do this within your phase or your grade, what would be your challenges? I know it'll be completely different to Ray.
Yes. Well, Sumayya, at our school, we have not just one curriculum. So we have the mainstream curriculum, but remember, our learners have physical disabilities. So we are talking about learners that are blind, learners who may be in wheelchairs or amputees, and so on. So even learners that are neurodivergent. So in terms of the read aloud day, I think it's a fantastic idea. But however, looking on the whole, in terms of us providing the children with resources to be able to do so, the sad thing is that when we talk about Braille, our blind learners don't have sufficient resources, in terms of Braille. And we find ourselves having to type out things and then brailing it ourselves at school. There isn't sufficient material. I think, even with textbooks, with the Department of Education, DBE has specific textbooks that they have brailled. So our teachers are faced with situations where if tomorrow we're going to do a read aloud day and we're going to turn to a passage in our books, the textbook for the braille learner, the textbook for the sighted learner is totally different. So, which means our teachers as well have to prep two different types of exercises for the same class. So here is where we have a serious challenge. Also, remember our children that have speech impediments and all the rest of it. We start from the junior level, from foundation phase, working on their ability to speak and so on. However, we are short of therapists. Schools don't have therapists to actually assist the learners, because when they get to the senior years, they will have to be able to speak as best as they can. So in terms of that, we do have challenges because we do not have the budget. Not being private, we don't have the budget. As much as we do as much fundraising as we can, we try with sponsorship, we just don't have the capacity, the financial capacity to employ speech therapists as an SGB post. So yes, so as I was saying, the read aloud day is wonderful, but with the literacy programs that departments is asking us to implement as well, there are so many needs. And yes, if other teachers have spoken about resources that we require, that is a desperate need. Also the know-how in special schools, a lot of the teachers have to train themselves. There aren't support workshops. There aren't sufficient ones. We have learners who have to use AAC and augmented language. So we need to do things like storyboards for them so that they can do their activities. All of that is expensive, and all of this is not provided to us as a government school. So yes, Sumayya, there are lots and lots of challenges.
Okay. Do you know, read aloud is so important. I had a message now, WhatsApp message from an educator, especially in the government sector, because we have learners in grade 5, even in grade 7, who cannot read or they cannot comprehend. So when you have a guest who comes into that classroom, or an educator, or someone just reading a story, that actually motivates and encourages the learners who cannot read to want to read.
Absolutely.
So reading aloud is vital, especially in the government schools.
And Sumayya, what would be wonderful is if we get retired educators. I know that educators, when they retire, don't want to go back, but some of them have the passion and the love for their subject, or even for the learners. It would be wonderful if, some of the retired educators would just volunteer, just go into classes and do a little reading program with the children, because honestly, with all that we have to do in terms of the English curriculum, there seriously isn't sufficient time to do the reading. So if it's group work and so on, and we could get people from the community that could come into schools and assist us with reading aloud to learners, and for me, it is vital in the sense that we have a lot of children where English is not their home language. So things like articulation and pronunciation of words, all of that is so important. You've got to hear somebody else, tell a story, pronounce the words so that you'll be able to learn from that experience, because that's the best way that our learners can learn.
And especially children in the government sector are not first language English. So it's like a second language.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
the difficulty also comes in there. Do you know, another message came through. I'm an educator in a government school. I got good advice to principals and GB reps, school teacher reps. Rope in your governing body. Make it their responsibility to ensure that parents, guests, people from the community come and do at least 3 times or 2 times a week reading with any grade. Wow, that's an excellent idea.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's brilliant. And also, we have libraries that are under-resourced. So I'll give you an example of most schools that I've been at that are government schools. We have these books from 1,000 years ago. I mean, they are falling apart, Sumayya. I don't know if you share this experience, but these books are falling apart. So we need for community to also assist us, in raising awareness to people who are able to businesses who are able to just go in and assist the library, and or even people in families out there. If you have books and your children are no longer using the books, pass it on to the nearest school, to their library, because it's very sad when we watch children. We insist you've got to take out at least 2 to 3 books in a week, and you've got to do your reading, and we've got our reading sheets for them to say how many pages they've read and so on. And then the books that they're taking home are just falling apart. And the books are really, really in bad condition. So if we could also get, businesses that could contribute to our school libraries, to our resource centers. A lot of our resource centers are so outdated. Some of them don't even have computers in them. And, now with the technological age, our learners should all be able to go in and get their books and use some sort of technology system to ensure that they are taking their books in and taking them out, So it's also a process of learning for them, for the big world. Yeah. So my plea to the community, if you have books to your nearest school, if you have anything that is going to assist us and the learners, and I'm going to make a special appeal, families out there, if you have learners who are blind and they have Braille books, please pass them on to our school, because we're in dire need. And it is just so sad, Sumayya, because we have children who go into the library and you say to I'm talking now of the blind learners, and you say, like, don't you want to take a book out? And the learner says, but ma'am, I have read all the books, all the Braille books. There aren't any new Braille books. So it is quite a challenge. But if we can have people out there just reaching out to us and reaching out to schools, just pass on what you're not using. It's an excellent way to, reinforce the reading, but at the same time to reinforce that spirit of Ubuntu that we're always talking about in our community.
Sister Edith Roberts, you need to come into school matters. You've been out of the classroom for very, very long. Been a bad girl.
Yes.
Thank you so much for, expressing and informing our listeners what is the reality out there in the majority of government schools. Well, you enjoy your Read Aloud Day tomorrow.
Thank you, Sumayya.
You take care. All the best for 2025.
All right, then. Thank you so much. Bye. You too. Bye-bye.
That was Sister Edith Roberts, an educator, manager from Open Air. Well, Sister Rehana, look at the difference now.
Yes.
The struggles.
And really, I hope that there are listeners out there. And I was going to say, if Edith wasn't going to say, the best gift that we can give our kids out there in the community is, of course, the gift of time. And really, if they are educators, there might be even parents out there who have the time and who want to just go in and help them out for that half an hour.
And
or that 1 hour.
She was mentioning libraries. Like, unfortunately, I would say most government schools do not have that privilege anymore of having just a librarian. When we were in schools, we had those librarians.
Yes, we had.
Now there's no librarians. And if you even look at it, libraries in different communities have become big elephants. Like no one visits them. I mean, technology is good, but no one visits the library.
Yeah, because nobody wants to upgrade them, if we have to say. Upgrading means knowing what's out there when it comes to reading material. Reading material has changed so
So
much
much.
over the years. It's no longer that traditional fairy tale book. No child wants to walk into, a library, if I have to say, and borrow just the odd, let's say, Cinderella or
Yeah.
whatever it is. I wouldn't want to. Even if I had to read it, I would rather read the fractured tale
Oh,
of
wow.
it.
Now that's
Fractured tale of
yeah.
it where Cinderella loves to clean, It's quite happy.
Sounds like us. Sounds like all the Makotis.
So
If you think about it, right, a colleague of mine we were discussing at one English cluster meeting. If you look at it, a lot of the textbooks, the reading material, especially with languages, are so outdated. Even the language, the learners cannot register to it, and schools are still using it. I know some schools are still using books that I used in dinosaurs' age, as my daughter will say, in schools. So there's that challenge there. So we need to get reading material which can relate to our learners, where they come from, where they live, what's happening in their day-to-day life.
So Sumayya, not to,
Mm.
blow my own trumpet, if you have to say, or whatever, but I've changed my perspective on comprehensions, and I create my own comprehensions, and I create them around current affairs. So I would perhaps just off the cuff think about when it was Heritage Day and Mitchell Park had the 120th birthday of Admiral the tortoise,
Yeah.
and I created that into a comprehension. So whatever my comprehensions are, the children are still learning beyond that.
That's it.
So they're learning history. It's not about, I don't know, the Lion and the Mouse or whatever.
Yeah.
It was a made up story. But rather, if we create and we talk to our children and we read aloud these sort of material so that and we're really integrating history and science and everything else that involves us. And what better way than to talk about events or places or things out there that are close to us. So, for instance, I would really read about snow, like about a snowman, because I would do it just to teach the children, but not in this sweltering weather where I just put
Yeah.
up a post where doesn't Durban know that the humidity level is only at 33% pass rate? Why is it more than that?
But since you're mentioning that,
But rather
it's
about
sad.
summer.
Literacy and numeracy, looking at literacy, we rank the lowest. What are we doing wrong? What is it? Because our teachers are qualified. We have the best DO officials, whether they provincial, national.
Yes.
Something is missing.
We have
There's
to
a link
change the
missing.
narrative. And this is what I'm saying is that we have to change the narrative. We have to find out what's the niche. I mean, there's a question that I said, ask me, how do we choose reading material?
Yeah.
Find the niche out there of what your child likes. You cannot just say, read this, and that child is not interested in that. If he's interested in cars, give him the
In
car
car book.
magazine, you'll be surprised how much he would enjoy it. And just being interactive with that book, opening it, just opening the pages and really just putting the phone aside, the digital media aside. When was the last time we read a paper? Okay, don't answer that because I know you looked at the Ramadan specials in the local newspaper.
I think the only thing is the local
So,
gazettes every community get. Who even buys? I know people who stopped prescribing to the newspapers, the daily news.
Mhm.
So technology is good. But it's also taking away that
Yeah.
reading. We have messages coming in. Dearest Sumayya, I started working with my parents. First term, we have a picture that my learners like. They make a story themselves. Move on term 2 or 3. Term 4, we make a puppet show out of their story. We'll send you the puppet tomorrow. This comes from Sister Nabawiya. Yes,
Oh, that's lovely.
that's lovely.
Amazing. Yeah.
And then we have another message from an educator. She'll write to remain anonymous. I'm teaching for 34 years. The problem is we as educators are also not stimulated and motivated. We are bombarded with tons of admin work and demands from the school and management and long days with overcrowded classrooms. Where do we get the motivation to do more and do extra when we are suffering from burnout? Well, that's something to think about if there's any DOE officials listening, or even subject advisors, especially with English. Well, again, we are human beings. Teachers need to be motivated.
Of course, teachers
And
are people
they always
too.
say it starts from the top going down.
Yes.
Do you know, you visit school sometimes? I don't know whether you experience this. If that atmosphere is creativity and productivity, it just rubs up on the whole school.
The vibe. It's the
the
vibe.
vibe, the
That's
vibe,
the new word now.
the vibe.
It's vibe. Yeah.
So you need to kind of grow it, instill it, and then if you go to another school, you just see decor, sings and quotes and things all over. That's the vibe of that school. So that's what you said, the vibe.
So I think as a teacher, you have to really put your best vibe before out. And I have a rule: don't come into my classroom if you're moody. That includes me also.
Yeah.
So I say to the kids, you know what? Don't come in if you're moody. It's fine. I acknowledge your emotion. I acknowledge your blue Mondays and everything else. Sit a while and pack that, but leave it there, and then let's move on. And I think for teachers also, as hard as it is, as easy as it might be, we just have to unpack it. Don't ever just not justify that you have those feelings and you have these down days and stuff. We all have it.
Do you know, I'm going to say
But
this on
ultimately,
air.
it's about the kids.
I mean,
yeah.
you guys have a very nice initiative. Every year, the learners are told to bring a book for the library.
Yes, so that is for the classroom library, and that's how you build your classroom library. So for us, we'd say, I bring a book. It doesn't have to be a brand new book. Books are expensive, and you walk into a bookshop, and really they are expensive. But it doesn't have to be a book that's expensive or new. It has to be a book that you are willing to give away. Now, some children are very territorial, and that's hard
Like
for them
toys.
to do. But it also stems when they do that. Then they're sharing. So they're learning to share. So I will say to the kids, you have given this book and we've added it to the shelf now. We've built it over the years. And you can decide at the end of the year, do you want to take back your book? And maybe 1 out of 10 would say, yes, I want to take back the book. Or do you want to give this book, Sadaqah Jariyah? Do
Yeah.
you want to give this book to your class library? So now when I have this grade 2, he's opening the book and he's seeing, this was my brother. He's now in grade 7, but we still have the book. So it really has carried down, and that's how
But that's an excellent idea.
you build your library. Nobody's going to say, if you force them to buy a brand new book, parents are not going to want to do that. Maybe, okay. In an ideal world, everybody would buy a new book. But what about those books that are lying on the shelf? What about, as Edith said, pack it up, drop it off at the offices? I always say, as parents, don't throw away anything you have in bulk unless you've asked your local school, do you want these egg trays? I've got so many.
but-
Do you want these books? I've got so many, science magazines or something that I think are of benefit to children. And then, if not, then discard it to go to recycling and
Well,
stuff.
a message came through from Mrs. Zulu, an educator in the Mlazi District Primary School. I like what your guest is saying, Sumayya, because when I started 27 years ago in my school, our learners come from poor backgrounds, nutritional problems. Most parents are not even working. But every single year, as management, we encourage any learner in the class, if they can, to contribute or bring a second-hand book or buy a new book. Nothing is forced. Over the years, from no library, we are sitting close to 4,900 books.
Look at that.
Alhamdulillah. Look at that.
Okay. And Sumayya, I would go to like a flea market, and there are, I'll give you an example, the Golden Hours Flea Market. They have a second-hand book stall there. And those books, you'll be surprised how many, or even like the SPCA bookshop, if you go there, those books are dirt cheap, first of
Yeah.
all. They're like 2 rand or 5 rand or 10 rand. And all they need is a good wipe.
Hmm.
Sumaya, I've got books that are first edition books that you would never get.
Hmm.
Those books are like, I've got, let's just say, The Cat in the Hat, but I've got The Cat in the Hat
Tell
as
me-
first edition.
Tell me, you
Uh-huh.
know what, guys who are listening right now, whether you're a parent, educator, whoever you are, tell me, do you ever have this experience when you buy a new book and you open it and just inhale it? That feeling of a new book, as if you remember
As
school
he
days, brand new
reads on
textbook.
his phone.
Huh? You know, when they open the book and it's the
And he
crisp
smells.
pages and the smell of a book. Bring
Yes.
back memories.
Yeah, books are just special.
But we also need to teach our children, besides, learning how to read, also to value print reading
Print
material.
media. Yes, print media.
Hmm.
It's so important. It's so easy to say, I can't read. And I said that the other day, but it's so easy to say, I can learn to read because I am looking at environmental script. So environmental script, for those listeners out there who don't know, are the scripts that we see as we pass stop signs or we pass a supermarket, and then your child reads that packaging of groceries, of those are print media that are environmentally available to you. You're not gonna go find a book that says what cereals are
Yeah.
available. You're going to go to the supermarket and you're going to take that moment and stand at the cereal aisle and let your child read all the books, all the cereals that are there.
Yeah.
That is environmental script.
Exactly.
You've taught your child 5 new words just by going into
there.
that aisle. Those are sort of things that we want our parents to do out there. We want you to be observant of the amount of read aloud availability there is,
There
if we
is.
have to say.
Do you know, we're focusing on literacy provincially, nationally, in our country. We do have a problem when it comes to literacy. We're not only focusing on the child when they're little, but you're teaching for quite a while. I won't mention your years, but how and why do you think reading helps us become better people? Reading.
I'm going to say that reading is something that if we convince that it's important,
Yeah.
then automatically we become important. You value something, you value yourself. It's about building your community through offering your children that opportunity to share experiences, to build connections with the book. A child doesn't need to go to, I can't go to Taiwan, but I can buy a book or read a book through that. And I think that is where books are so important. Reading aloud is so important. When was the last time you walked into a bookstore and really it is an experiment? Take your child into a bookstore, even an adult as a bookstore, and see which aisle it takes you to. What's your favorite?
Well, I have a question to you. Yes, Sister Rihanna, I enjoy listening to you. I caught you at Gateway. I would like to know, I'm an educator in the government sector where resources are really, really low. What's the most creative way you've encouraged a learner or student to read? That's what we face every single day.
I've started something this year. I hope that it follows through. It's called my 100 book challenge. Now, it's going to be a little bit of a task because does a child have 100 books? But I've asked them, you can add your library books. You can add your books at home. Every time you read a book, and not necessarily read it on your own, but under supervision as well, we jot it down. We log it down. We are down to, I think the most at the moment is about 15 books somebody's already read.
Wow.
And they short books. I mean, so encouragement for reading comes from all of that. Encouragement comes from, having star charts, giving tangible evidence of I'm good at this. And as a parent out there, as a teacher out there, it's important. I mean, it doesn't have to be a star, but you just encouraging them and little dot, or you drawing a star or something like that.
We have another message. I'm a retired educator after 43 years. I have one piece of advice. If you are retired, I agree with the guest. Make it an outing where you get up to dress up and show up at any school, because when you are retired, those days of relaxing can be a bit boring. So count your blessings as your one leg is already in the grave. Go and do your community service in the school down your road. That's a very nice way of putting it. Yeah. And, you know, how do you think reading can change the world? Can it?
Of course it can. I mean, reading is your superpower.
Mills and booms, silhouettes. See that smirk on your face.
No, I don't read all of
Asif,
that.
you're wondering what's Mills and booms and what's silhouettes.
Wondering.
Asif, listen, Asif, this young tech over here. Those are like, what is it? The Bold and the Beautiful and the Days of the Lives.
Smear, every idea, every act of kindness, and every dream starts with what? A story. You know, I've got plates, I've got a dinner service at home that says, my story, your story begins at home.
Yeah.
So again, back to what I said when we started, reading starts at the laps, or happens at the laps of the parents. And one book at a time, we can really change the world when it comes to reading stamina, reading the love of books, reading for every story. Every story becomes something. It's not today is the day you say, I am really going to change my perspective. I'm not just going to kick that message book. I'm not just going to.
Well, before we round up, I have one last message here, which I'm going to read out. I'm an educator for the last 14 years. I want each one of you, of my colleagues throughout SA, tell me, when last did you stand in front of your classroom, read with expression, change your voice, move your hand, shake your booty? Well, regardless of the subject which you are doing, whether it's NS, whether it's tech, whether it's English, whether it's Afrikaans, whether it's Zulu, do that for your learners, and you will encourage them without you even knowing to read. That's so amazing. That's so true. Well, Rihanna, you know what? Time always just goes away. Thank you so much for coming to Read Aloud.
Always a pleasure. I hope you have a wonderful World Read Aloud Day. I know, I'm really looking forward to it. It's Read Aloud Day loading.
Yeah.
We started with this program and we are going to follow through to tomorrow. And then, inshallah, for the listeners out there, from myself, until we meet again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yes, that was our guest Rihanna Said from Alphala College, and we linked up with Edith Roberts from Open Air. I'd like to thank our tech. I think I was educating him, going back down memory lane of being a student in school. My email address is smayakhan.alansar@outlook.com. A book is a gift. You can open it again and again. More treasure in books than in all the pirates' loot on Treasure Island. Book train your mind to imagination to think big. Reading is to the mind, exercise is to the body. Assalamu alaikum.
You are listening to School Matters with Sumayya Khan.
Teaching you something new every day. Radio Al Ansar.
This segment is brought to you by Kenfield Auto, your RMI approved service and repair specialist.